388 An Introduction to God. Torah Mizmor, Torah's Song. 9. Yashaya, Yaz, Salvation. Prophetic Teaching. Yahweh revealed what is going to happen in the days preceding his return because he wants his people to be prepared. Therefore, the prophet was shown, and is now revealing, the rotting carcass of Shaul, Paul, the leader of the boisterous religious parade known as Christianity. The wannabe apostle twisted and distorted Yahweh's message in his 14 letters, replacing the truth with the futility of faith in pagan gods and idolatrous images, all to the detriment of Jews. Billions of souls have been pulled away from God, having joined in without thinking, many out of fear, making this particularly indicting toward Judaism in addition to Christianity. It is why, as we pursue what the prophets say about the Torah, we find Yahweh revealing. Woe, this is a warning, Howie, alas, this disastrous and destructive situation, to those who take the lead in promoting, Mashak, for those who draw up and carry out, advancing, error by twisting and distorting, Ha-A-1, wrongdoing through perversity and depravity, by warping and corrupting the message, in a boisterous and agonizing religious parade, Bar-Chebel, with the binding force of religion, with destructive and ruinous cords, from Shebal, to bind and to pledge, to corrupt and destroy, of error, futility, and vanity, Ha-Shawa, of worthless lies, pagan gods, idolatrous images, false and empty promises, from show, to ravage, devastate, destroy, and ruin. 389 As with, Wakar, the ties that bind on the harness, are both, the chains and fetters which fasten, control, and imprison, the twisted ropes which constrain, of a cart, Ha-Agala, on the wheels of progress which revolve, going round and round, as the oxen on a threshing device, of misleading ways, Chatar, that which leads in the wrong direction, from chatter, to mislead, to miss the way, to incur guilt, and to forfeit the opportunity, Yashaya, Isaiah 5:18, the one among them says, Ha-Amar, the individual boasts. Without thinking and out of anxiety over the future, he should want to hurry, Mahar, impetuously, without wisdom or sense, showing an unfounded concern over anticipated events. P. Imperfect Yosef, the speaker is imposing his influence over the object on a continual basis while trying to make it seem as if this was the object's will. I want him to expedite, Shubsh. I want him to immediately and enthusiastically yield, acquiescing even if he is greatly disturbed by this, and take pleasure in the sensory nature of expediting. Hyphal Imperfect Yosef Paragogic Cohortative, his work, Marseille, his fate, his deed, and what he has to accomplish, from Asar, to act and engage, so that, Man, for the purpose and reason that, from Anna, to answer and to respond, we may see it, Ra, we can view it. Looking upon him ourselves and make judgments based upon our perceptions of what is revealed, Kal Imperfect. So then, Wah, let the vexing counsel, advice, and plan, Eitzar, the mischievous scheme and malicious purpose, even the defiant revolt, from Etz and Eitzar, wooden image or idol constructed to encourage the worship of a god, of the Holy One, Kadosh, of the set-apart one, since this is in the voice of the misleading founder of the Christian religion, we should read it as he would say it, of Israel, individuals who strive and wrestle with God, present itself, Karab, let it come, 390 happen, arrive, and appear, including the harvest as summoned, Kal Imperfect Joseph, because, Wah, we want to have it revealed, Yada, our desire is to have it shown to us so that we might recognize it and choose to acknowledge it, Kal Cohortative Imperfect, an actual, and ongoing expression of first-person volition. Yashaya, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 5:19. To begin, Yahweh is warning those Mashak, who take the lead in promoting Ha-A1, error by twisting and distorting his message. And that is expressly what Paul, Akiba, and Muhammad have done. Unable to create a unique religious dogma on their own, these religious leaders twisted God's testimony. But that was not enough for them. They craved the prestige that a large number of followers would provide. So, they blended their perverted renditions of Yahweh's message with the most popular pagan myths, knowing that, if their gods were similar to widely accepted deities, their parade would pick up converts more readily. Soon, entire communities and then regions and nations would be following them, walking down life's thoroughfares carrying religious images. Like the proverbial lemmings, they would fall to their death following those who had gone before them. Religion, which comes to us from the Latin religio, means to rebind. It is analogous to a both, the ties that bind on a harness, the chains or fetters which are used to control, and the twisted ropes which constrain. In this case, the victims of the religious leaders' perverted message are tied to a cart headed in the wrong direction, rolling along in a parade of error. They are deliberately being misled and pulled away from God, forfeiting their opportunity to know Him as a direct result of these religious counterfeits. 391 While most are born into their religion, adopting the faith of their fathers, initially all of Paul's, Akiba's, and Muhammad's followers were impulsive and, thus, easily misled. Some went along so that he did not kill them, many because of the booty, others because the charlatan promised that the next life would be better than their current plight. The third aspect of this prophetic statement conveys an idea that may seem at cross purposes with that which comes before it. But such is the duplicity of religion, especially Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The reason we hear one of those tethered to the cart of sin calling out during this dubious parade that he wants a quick response from his God is that he not only needs validation, he wants the others to believe that his God is committed to saving them and punishing their enemies. While it is unquestionably true that Christians are fixated on the swift return of the misnomer Jesus, and Jews on the advent of their unnamed warrior Messiah, believing that he will validate their faith and make them victorious over unbelievers, they don't know that they will be sorely disappointed. And that is the point. No matter how many times and ways their religion is refuted, their fallback position is always the same: you just wait, and when the Messiah comes, you'll be sorry. Specifically, as it relates to Paul, his only prophecy predicted the return of his God within his lifetime. It was a false notion which matches Yeshaya's denunciation. Christians and Jews alike, however, want their Messiah to accelerate his return, to swoop down and save them while refuting their critics. The rabbis have known for a score of centuries that the Messianic age closes within 6,000 years of Eden. Time is ticking down. Moreover, the fact that Christians crave a second coming is proven by a simple stroll into a Christian 392 bookstore to see how many shelves are devoted to eschatology. While we know that the Christian Jesus never existed and is not tied to Israel, this is pertinent because Christians have claimed the promises made to Daud for him and to Israel for themselves. They want everyone to accept their revisionist history and replacement theology. In this regard, Eitzar can simply convey advice and counsel without implying whether that guidance is good or bad. Similarly, Eitzar can speak of a plan or purpose whether the intent is beneficial or counterproductive. However, since this is in the voice of those responsible for the inception of religious lies, we should be aware that Eitzar also conveys a message which is adverse and telling. Eitzar depicts a revolting and disobedient scheme to resist and defy the authority of God through the use of wooden idols and images constructed to worship the deity. God could, therefore, be denouncing the central plank of Pauline Christianity, of those who worship a dead God on a stick. Now continuing with Yahweh's indictment of this man and those who would advance his lies, Yeshaya reveals, "Woe, this is a warning, Howie, alas, this disastrous and destructive situation can ruin a person, so this is a cautionary notification, to the one among those who call, Ha'amar, to the one who says, ascribes, presents praises and declares, Kal active participle, a verbal adjective in which the subject is the actor who influences the object, that which is evil, La Hara, that which is wrong, contemptible, malicious, noxious, worthless, and injurious, good, Tob, correct, beneficial, productive, and pleasing, and, Wa, that which is good, La Ha Tob, evil, Ra, that which comes from a loudmouthed and malicious countryman, who replaces, Sim, moves to set in place, 393 appointing in a new location, Kal participle active, darkness, Choshik, blackness, the absence of light, obscurity and the cause of ignorance and confusion, the condition under which evil thrives and death prevails, 4, La, light, or, energy and enlightenment, the essence of time and source of guidance. Being observant, and life, and, Wa, light, or, 4, La, darkness, Shoshik, who replaces, Sim, moves to set in place, appointing in a new location, that which is bitter and anguishing, Ma, the poison of disagreeable despair of obstinate rebellion and defiance of a wicked whore, 4, La, that which is sweet and pleasant, Mathauk, that which is nourishing and acceptable, even enjoyable, and, Wa, that which makes one pleasing and acceptable, Mathauk, 4, La, poison which embitters and anguishes through obstinate rebellion. Ma. Yeshaya, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 5:20. For those who have read the 4 volumes of Questioning Paul, you know that this is what we find in Shaul's 14 epistles. And for those who have read volumes 4, 5, and 6 of Yada Yahweh on the Mod Mikre, you realize that this also is similar to many of the rabbinic arguments found in the Babylonian Talmud. It is the very definition of Babel, of the religious propensity to intermix truth and lies, good and bad, light and darkness, that which nourishes with that which poisons. The purpose, of course, is to confuse by corrupting God's message, inverting his witness. Of this, the rabbis were maestros. There is nothing more deceptive or religious than a half-truth. False prophets avoid outright lies because they seem so out of place with the culture and seldom have the substance to fool the masses. But by blending truth and lies together, the perversions often appear credible. It is what has made Judaism so difficult to assail and Christianity so contagious. those who prioritize faith over reason, and 394 man's words over the Torah, have no defense against the fables. And while ignorance is deadly, there is something far more contemptible. Those who mislead under false pretenses are vastly more dangerous and deplorable. Woe, this is a warning, Howie, alas, you are about to be in serious peril, so this is a caution, to those who claim to be learned, even scholarly, to the crafty and cunning, Charkham, to those who are considered wise, the subtle and shrewd who piously impart their wisdom, in their own eyes, bar and hem, in their own sight and from their perspective, giving the impression and outward appearance of understanding, and, wah, to those making associations, bin, those distinguishing between things, needful participle. The subject carries out and is influenced by the action of the verb which serves to depict his nature, as a contrarian, nejd, as one who is the opposite of what is perceived, taking a public position which is counter to the light, through their appearance and public persona, panahem, their presence. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 5:21. The more you know of them, the more you will see the infamous shadows of Paul, Akiba, and Muhammad, even Maimonides in these words. It puts them and those who believe them in conflict with God. To say that Yahweh is not impressed with religious, political, military, or corporate titles or those who hold them, would be an understatement. Woe, this is a warning, Howie, alas, to the powerful and influential, to politicians and military heroes, Jaibawa, to the strong and mighty, to the valiant soldiers and warriors, to the most prominent individuals in positions of leadership within a society, to those who fight for power and prevail, acting proudly, demonstrating an uncommon determination and ability to fight, as a result 395 of, la, becoming drunk by consuming, shatar, drinking and experiencing the intoxicating influence of, wine, yain. Becoming inebriated, from an unused root meaning to effervesce, and, wah, to individuals, ish, men, of nobility and wealth, chale, who are physically strong, politically enabled, militarily powerful, and religiously and socially active, with regard to, la, mingling and mixing together, masok, combining and pouring out, producing a blend of, intoxicants which impair judgment, sheker, inebriating libations which intoxicate and debilitate. Yashar, Isaiah 5:22, who justify and acquit, Zardak, who validate and declare righteous, those who are religious and wrong, Rasha, those who are guilty of being in opposition, who are invalid and incorrect, as a quid pro quo to gain influence, Socked, to garner favor, as a bribe or tribute, or to remain popular and accepted, thereby, wah, turning away and depriving, sur, turning aside and forsaking, rejecting and vanquishing, removing and abandoning, hyphal imperfect. Those who would otherwise be correct and vindicated, Zardak Azadikim, those who would be right, honest, upright, righteous, and acquitted, from, min, away from, him, you. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 5:23. Wine is almost always used as a metaphor, just as drunkenness is typically symbolic of having one's judgment impaired. So, while Americans and Israelis have a serious problem with intoxicants, from alcohol to illicit drugs, even to prescription medicines, this is likely addressing an inability of most people today to process information in a timely fashion and respond properly. Just as an intoxicated woman cannot provide consent, the overtly political, religious, and conspiratorial have been incapacitated, demonstrating a collective and growing inability to think, effectively nullifying the advantages of a conscience and free will. 396 I suspect what God is saying here is that, if you want to be a Christian, He does not care. You are free to squander your soul to Paul's intoxicating rhetoric. The same is true with Judaism. If you want to believe that either the Zohar or Baal Shem Tov was credible, have at it. Wear your weasel hat with pride. But neither is free to publicly justify any religion because the effect is to negatively influence God's people. Yahweh realizes that we must think our way to Him, and so anyone who impairs that ability will suffer the consequence. The more closely aligned an individual is to any influential human institution, the more distant they are from God. As such, we see a different spirit at play, one which is inebriating and bewildering and, thus, misleading. Therefore, as a result, Laken, likewise thereafter, in the sequence of events, just as, Ka, a tongue, Lashon, the message, used as a metaphor for language of fire, Esh, of flames of radiant energy and light, devours Hekal, consumes the chaff, Kash, the dry husks of grain which are discarded and blown away by the wind, and, Wah, the scorching blaze, Lihabar, the white-hot and gleaming flame, withers, Rapha, incapacitates so as to hang limp and feeble, collapsing, the dry and combustible foliage, Shashash, fading grass and brittle leaves having fallen from the trees which are of little value and burn readily, their roots, Sorshem, the base of the plant which anchors it in the soil and nourishes it, likewise, Ka, accordingly, have become, higher, is, rotten with the stench of decay, mak, decomposed, producing an offensive odor. And there, wahem, blossoms, perak, buds, the beginning stage of fruit, young shoots and flowers, related to parakak, brood and young, are like, kar, the dust, harbak, the ashes, from a back, pulverized like powder, blowing and floating in the breeze because it is so small and insignificant, which is carried away, Allah, which is 397 sacrificed, stirred up and then disparaged, ridiculed in a way that is not right, similar to a burnt offering in a holocaust, because, ky, for the express reason, they have rejected and avoid, mass, they have come to loathe any association with, holding in contempt, refusing to accept, kal perfect, the Torah, Torah, an association with the source from which teaching, guidance, direction, and instruction flow, of Yahweh, Yahweh, an accurate transliteration of the name Yehovah. Our Eloah, God is guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, and our Shalom, reconciliation, of the vast array of spiritual messengers, Zaba, of the host of heavenly envoys, energy-based implements mustered to serve as conscripts appointed and predisposed under the command of the Almighty to go forth, carrying out and interpreting his will, engaging to fight on God's behalf. The instructive word and promise, Imra, an association with that which has been communicated to teach and to show the intent, of the set-apart one, Kadosh, the one who is separated from the mundane and common and thus neither religious or political, of Yisrael, of individuals who engage and endure with God, they spurn, have discarded, and treat with contempt, Nats, they dislike and even belittle, showing little regard for, they blaspheme, dishonor and slander, Peel perfect. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 5:24. A tongue of fire is indicative of God's word spoken boldly. It devours religious rhetoric. Man's schemes are scorched in its presence. And those who would challenge the Almighty are incapacitated by his testimony. Their foundation rots and their brood is blown away. The fiery light is the Torah, the very word of God. It can consume or nourish, burn or enlighten, destroy or 398 empower, depending upon one's attitude toward Yahweh's guidance. Animosity toward Yahweh's Torah is mankind's biggest problem, humanity's most egregious error. And I was once counted among them. I was a Christian, an ordained elder and a trained evangelist who led public prayers and Bible studies. It was not until I began to wrestle with some 20 questions no Christian can resolve and then discovered that the text of Christian Bibles cannot be trusted that I began to reject the religion that had beguiled me in my youth. But it was not until I began to study the Torah and prophets and translate what God had to say that I was able to determine the many ways Yahweh proves his existence and authorship. He isn't religious, and does not want to be worshipped. He wants to serve as our Father. Moreover, his Torah was written to perfect us so that he could adopt and enrich us. This was not the last time Yashar would address the Torah. There would be another in the prophet's 8th chapter. As we approach his assessment, we should recognize that it was during the Yatzah, liberation from Miraim, the crucibles of religious and political oppression, when hundreds of thousands enjoyed God's presence, that this represented the greatest number of people who would come to know Yahweh at any one time. I am hopeful that this assembly will be surpassed in 11 years when Yahweh returns to reconcile his Berith, covenant relationship with Israel and Yahweh on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 year, a Sunday evening at sunset in Yerushalayim, 6/22/399 p.m., October 2, 2033. Yeshaya's testimony, and this witness to his revelation, exist for that purpose because we are aware that there have been long periods of time, the most recent lasting nearly 2 millennia, when no one on earth knew Yah. For reasons that have nothing to do with him and everything to do with us, God remains unpopular. With no one to talk to or work with, Yahweh has withdrawn, offering his word as his only witness. And even then, apart from the few who have been sufficiently open-minded and willing to go where his directions lead, the number of people who know Yah is, even now, thousands among billions. There is no excuse. We live at a time when there is unfettered access to Yahweh's testimony in the language he chose to reveal himself to us. We are able to obtain ancient manuscripts dating back 2,300 years, and plenty of interlinears and lexicons to ascertain what God conveyed. All we need now is the motivation. To find the truth, one must be willing to invest the time and energy into the pursuit of understanding. It has not mattered that Yahweh has always been approachable and pleasing to be around, or that he is actually God, the creator of the universe and author of life. It would not seem to matter that he had a lot to say that was particularly interesting and useful. It would not matter that he answered mankind's most important questions, proving his existence through prophecy. It would not matter that his testimony demonstrated that every religion was invalid, and that they all lead away from him. It would not matter that he was willing to get down on his knees to lift us up, or that he required so little of us and was still willing to give us more than we could ever imagine. Humankind would prefer the words of men over 400 the word of God, squandering their souls and forfeiting everything Yahweh was offering in the process. On this day in the 8th century BCE, however, as we approach the 8th chapter of Yashar, there was still a handful of Yahweh willing to listen. One among them, Yashar, was also willing to write down what he would hear. Yahweh asked him to grasp hold of a very large scroll, and using a pen, inscribe the following in ordinary human form, Maharshalal Chauchbaz. Then, Yahweh, an accurate transliteration of the name Yahweh, said, Amar, actually conveyed, literally expressing, and declaring with unfolding implications, Kalim perfect, to me, Eleni, as God unto me, on your own initiative, obtain, Lakak la otter, choose on your behalf to accept, receive, and grasp hold of, Kal imperative, an extremely large, Gadaul, great because it will be important, Vellum scroll, Gilean, roll of prepared animal skins to convey a message in writing, from Galar. To uncover and reveal, to discover and make known, to disclose and show oneself, and, choose to write on it, Katab al-Hu, of your own free will, elect to inscribe a message on it using the alphabet, Kal imperative, with a pen, Varchere, using an implement designed to apply ink, from an unused root meaning to engrave, in ordinary human form, in Aush, in the common characters associated with mortal man. Concerning and on behalf of, regarding, Maharshalal Chauchbaz, the rapid and thoughtless plunder of those enjoying their disturbing behavior while quickly capturing a spoil as militants and armed robbers, impetuously and anxiously, rashly and rapidly, headlong without thinking and without hesitation, Shalal, plunder the prey, taking a spoil, Chauch, acting quickly, showing haste, rushing while dismayed, actually enjoying being greatly disturbed, as, while capturing people's possessions during a militant assault or armed 401 robbery. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:1. It is almost incomprehensible that the creator of the universe would leave the transmission of his message up to the inclination of a being he had created. But that is what is happening here. God wanted us to know that it was Yashar's choice as to whether or not he would engage and write this down for our benefit. This means that Yahweh respects those who listen to him. He trusts their judgment. And he would prefer to work with a flawed and willing individual than work alone. The realization that Yahweh asked his prophet to grasp hold of a Gadaul, especially large and indeed great scroll, served to be prophetic. The largest and only complete scroll in the entire Qumran collection is called the Great Isaiah Scroll. Even God's adjectives are prophetic. Apart from Yahweh's Nabi, prophets, there isn't another example of what we are witnessing. Those who conceived their religions, and then spoke on behalf of the gods they had imagined, never memorialized their conversations in writing. For example, Muhammad was illiterate. It would be generations before his oral recitals would be committed to paper. In fact, there was no Arabic alphabet at the time. Never once is he afforded a choice. Paul's letters convey his thoughts. His favorite line is, "But I, Paul, say." The few times he quotes God, it's always a misconstrued and mistranslated rendition of something that was previously committed to writing by an actual prophet 6 to 14 centuries prior to his ploy. Rabbis argue about the Torah, and with each other, throughout their Babylonian Talmud, but there isn't a single example of Yahweh speaking through any of them. What we are witnessing here is unique in time, people, and nearly so in place, circa 1450 to 450 BC among 402 Israelites in Israel, with the exception of Daniel, which is such a long and convoluted story. The first volume of Babel is devoted to exposing it. The stories attributed to pagan deities were just that, stories that evolved and changed over time. Nowhere in these senseless and tragic myths, or in the Talmud, in Paul's epistles, or in Muhammad's Quran do we find a God asking anyone to write their message down. The last thing these liars wanted was accountability. There are 6 reasons why Yahweh asked his prophet to memorialize what he had to say in writing during the revelation. First, information is retained more accurately in writing than when conveyed orally. To test this conclusion, gather 4 or 5 people together and ask them to form a line. Initially, recite Yashar 5:19-24 found at the beginning of this chapter into the ear of the individual at one end of the line and then ask him or her to repeat it to the person standing next to them, one after the other, until the last person tries to repeat what they have heard. The result is typically laughable. For comparison, print out the first 10 pages of this chapter, which contains the same citation, and hand it to the first person in the line and have them recite it. Pass the text to the next person with the same instruction, and so on until the 4th person has handed the printed text to the 5th and they have read it aloud. Unless someone is illiterate or wholly unfocused, every rendition will be the same, and each will accurately reflect what was written. The fact is, I wrote the initial 10 pages of this chapter and read it through a second and third time after composing it, working to improve it, and yet if I were to close my eyes and try to recite it from memory, I'd get more of it wrong than right. The point is, if you want your message to be accurately transmitted, put it in writing, just as Yahweh has done. 403 The Dead Sea Scrolls serve as a perfect example. Scribed approximately 2,000 years ago from much older scrolls, they, with tremendous fidelity, transmit Yahweh's testimony through the millennia, a feat which would have been impossible with oral traditions. Second, both individual comprehension and retention are measurably increased when we recite and study a written presentation as opposed to only hearing it. Unlike the spoken word whose reverberations dissipate shortly after they are formed, we have the opportunity to read a written presentation over and over again, as often and as long as we like. And even the exercise of mouthing the words engages more of our brain, further enhancing retention. And that is why Yahweh asks us to observe His word and listen to Him. The more we repeat the process, especially if we recite it aloud and think about the implications, seeking to understand what we are reading while jotting down our conclusions, the message will naturally be transferred from short-term to long-term memory, enabling us to recall the presentation whenever we need it. Third, the spoken word tends to elicit an emotional response, whereas the written word facilitates a more logical evaluation. People are moved by speeches and remain influenced by them long after most of the words are forgotten. A written message is food for the brain while the spoken word inspires the heart. Fourth, written words are more readily validated, especially today with the advent of internet search engines. Every word is there for us to inspect. We do not have to ask the speaker to pause while we look them up. We have all the time we need to seek definitions which are complete and correct. All the while, we can move from examining the details to broadening our perspective to ponder each word's 404 contribution to the message as a whole. We even have the time to compare what we have just seen to something we have previously read. With a written text, we have the opportunity to check to see if a statement is accurate scientifically or historically. And by comparing what we have just read to other statements the author has made on similar subjects, we can check for consistency and reject the message of those prone to contradictions. Fifth, until quite recently, the maximum number of people who could actually hear an oral statement was a few thousand people, even under the most ideal circumstances. But once the message is written down, it can be read by and recited by almost everyone on Earth. As evidence of this, there are nearly as many smartphones today as there are people, nearly 8 billion of each, all of which can present Yahweh's Torah when visiting www.yardaya.com, and most smartphones can even translate it if needed. Sixth, the spoken word is fleeting while the written word is enduring. The tenor of Yahweh's voice is unknown to us, but the words Yahweh asked Yashar to scribe on the scroll are as vital and piercing as the day his ink first stained the parchment. If you want your word to endure, put it in writing. And this is particularly vital when using prophecy to verify one's authenticity. For example, the Great Psalms Scroll, the Great Isaiah Scroll, and the scrolls containing portions of the second half of Daniel where Dowd accurately predicted events which played out many centuries after they were copied around 200 BCE. They provide irrefutable proof that Yahweh exists and that he inspired what we are reading. More than this, Yahweh did not just ask Yashar to write his revelation on the parchment scroll, he actually described the alphabet he wanted him to use. And come to find out, it is the same one we have been using from the 405 beginning, the original pictorial characters which depict Enosh, human characteristics. There are 22 letters in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. 10 of these characters represent aspects of the human anatomy: a foot, a person standing upright, an outstretched arm and hand, the open palm with fingers, sperm, an eye, a mouth, a person reading and observing, a profile picture of our head, and teeth. Of the remaining 12, all pertain to human activities. From keeping sheep, and tending to them with a shepherd's staff, to the doorway of our home, and the tent peg, which secures our shelter, even the wall which protects it. With the plough, we prepare our fields for the yield we collect in a basket. We print and read signs, sometimes signing our names to them, drink water, to live, and begin each day as the sun breaks over the horizon. God's alphabet addresses things of human interest. A ram's head depicts the communal, non-violent animal man is most likely to shepherd as a source of milk, wool, and protein. The represents the shepherd's staff, demonstrating an engaged and caring leader protecting his flock. The Beth, family home, was drawn to portray the floor plan of a shelter where children are nurtured and grow. The represents the doorway into that home and access to the family. The is the tent peg used to enlarge and secure the homes of the day. The plough was used to remove the weeds and prepare the ground for farming. Fences kept the family and their flock secure. The harvest was carried in a basket. As we know, water is fundamental to life. Even the Torah represents a signature, revealing the name of the individual communicating with us. This brings us to the essence of Yahweh's warning. The northern kingdom had become militant, political, and religious, and in so doing, the people of Israel had turned 406 away from Yahweh and against Yahweh, Yah's beloved. No longer under God's protection, they would soon be sacked and enslaved by the Assyrians. The conquest would be Mahar, rapid and rash. The wayward and misled nation would be Shalal, plundered Chosh, without hesitation by those who would actually relish the role of Baz, thieves engaged in armed robbery. As a descriptive phrase, it unambiguously conveyed the impending and prolonged fate of Israel. And in contrast with his promise to protect Yahweh, there would be no reprieve for Ephraim through the ensuing years, that is until now when we are approaching the fulfillment of Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliations. The designation, Mahar Shalal Chosh Baz, is also forward-looking. It accurately depicts the long and relentless assault of Imperial Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, Islamic jihadists, and the Nazis upon Israel, of unthinking and rash armed robbers relishing the role of plundering thieves. It is also descriptive of what Israel ought to expect during the impending all-Islamic war. If intended as a name, the moniker would convey the consequence of the epithet given to Husha's third son, Lo Ami, becoming not my children. They had perverted and annulled the intent of the covenant and would, therefore, have to fend for themselves. Turning back to the bigger issue and thinking it through, one might assume that there would be a host of ways God could communicate directly with his creation without imposing himself on us and violating our free will. But other than through a document such as the Torah, which we are free to accept or reject, I am unaware of any. Existing in greater dimensions, he cannot enter our 3D realm apart from using spiritual implements to convey his nature and purpose. God is not so small that all of him will fit within the body of a man. Sorry, Christians. Therefore, he cannot simply walk up to us and introduce himself. 407 And even then, that would be a frustrating waste of time. If God were to greet everyone personally and perform a miracle for each individual, most would still reject him in favor of the more familiar and popular gods of man's making. Can you imagine what a Muslim would do if Yahweh approached and said that he is God and not Allah, or a Christian when he acknowledged that there was no Jesus Christ? When using spiritual implements, words and witnesses, Yahweh still has to be cautious about how imposing these representations can be. Too bold, and once again he is back to the problem of becoming impossible to ignore and difficult to reject. In doing so, he would make a mockery of choice. Had God implanted his testimony inside of us, we would all know him. Everyone would love him, and there would be no way to corrupt his word or create alternative gods based on our perversions. However, without a viable alternative, the choice would be between God and nothing. As an innately social being, no one would choose isolation. And so, now you can appreciate why Yahweh gave Torah to Adam in the garden. Ponder for a moment just how ineffective the fire on top of the mountain, the booming voice from above, and the miracles were during the Yatzah, Exodus. Even while they were occurring, even as the beneficiaries of these things, a considerable number of Israelites preferred worshipping the gods of Egypt with whom they had become familiar. The blazing light, booming voice, and life-saving miracles were impossible to ignore, and yet, they were ineffective. And nothing has changed. If a corporeal manifestation of Yahweh, or his son, Daud, were to walk into the Vatican, the Pope would never acknowledge either. 408 By far, the most enduring and effective way to know Yahweh has been and remains to read the words his prophets scribe for our benefit or, at the very least, listen to those reciting them. It is the most enlightening, enriching, and empowering thing we can do. Therefore, I'd like to call on witnesses to testify for me, let's help one another by repeatedly issuing a warning, admonishing others, providing a restoring testimony to affirm future events as a means to approach me, imperfect cohortative. The witness is engaged by God and becomes like him with regard to the testimony which has ongoing implications when expressed freely by the one sharing God's words, eternal witnesses, those who provide everlasting testimony. Presenting the enduring evidence, regarding what happened in the ancient past and into the future, forever, who are truthful and reliable, who are trustworthy and verifiable, dependable and steadfast, who are unwavering and enduring, correct, credible, and confident, needful participle passive, the subjects, as witnesses providing the testimony, are eternally and demonstrably influenced by it. Such as, with both, Uriah, is light, from Ur, or, light and Yahweh, the one who assists, Cohen, the priest who teaches and functions to explain the Mikra, performing in an office established by God, from Kahan, to serve by mediating, and Zachariah, remember from Zakar, to recall and be mindful of, to mention and bring to mind, reminding others about Yahweh, the son of, Ben, Yeberikyahu, Yeberikyahu, Yah blesses, from Yahweh and Barak. To kneel down in love to lift up. Yashar, freedom is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:2. There can be no better job, no higher calling, no more enjoyable or productive way to invest our time than to testify on behalf of Yahweh. There is no mistaking the 409 fact that this is obviously what God wants. After all, He just told us so. We should accept His invitation and then strive to meet His expectations. Uriah Harkohen, Uriah the priest was an unsavory character. Based upon the pagan altar he would craft for King Ahaz in 738 BC, which was modeled after one seen in Damascus, Yahweh is either using him as an example of all that is wrong with Israel or simply acknowledging his name and position to affirm that God is light. There is one other possibility. Since there are few things he could have done worse than building a pagan altar, placing it in Yahweh's home, and then conducting sacrifices upon it in harmony with the king's wishes, thereby becoming the embodiment of Maher-shalal-Chokshbaz, it is possible that Uriah came to regret his decision. If so, he would have seen the problems Israel was facing even more clearly than others who had not been exposed to religious error. He would have understood why God asked us to disassociate from such things. We have a similar issue with Zechariah Yeberikyahu. If it is to be considered a positive reference, then he is the Zechariah who worked with Yoikiah, Hezekiah to remove pagan artifacts from Yahweh's home prior to celebrating Chag Matzah as presented in 2 Chronicles 29. Otherwise, we are back to relying upon the meaning of his name, which is remember Yahweh blesses. If it was not for the fact that a man follows Yudlaini and Ed, none of us would qualify. But when we recognize Yahweh is simply asking us to testify on his behalf, to share his eternal witness, so long as we convey what he has had inscribed in writing, and comment accordingly, everything we say will be a man because Yahweh is a man. 410 Yahweh wants us to convey his words in such a way that the reader can verify them for themselves, confirming their authenticity. This has always been the reason we have included the Hebrew basis for each translation within the citation itself. It is why we have striven to explain the thinking behind our choices when there are other options. Moving on to the next statement, we are confronted with another mystery. While Yahweh views religion as prostitution, we do not know the identity of the prophetess in this next statement, although she is likely a spokesperson for a religious cult. Adding further intrigue, Nabi was scribed in the masculine rather than the feminine in 1 Kesser. Nonetheless, since Yahweh has been criticizing the religious for having led his people astray, and recognizing that the name being ascribed to her child is indicative of the consequence of religion, this is a reasonable conclusion. And so, I approached, Karab, I came near, the prophetess, Harnabia, the woman who claims to speak for God to predict the future. Nabi is masculine in 1 Kesser, and she conceived, Wahara, she became pregnant, and gave birth to a son, Yalod Ben, she delivered a baby boy. Then, Yahweh, the proper pronunciation of the name of Yahweh, said, Amar, to me, El-Eni, call his name, Karashem Hu, issue a summons by proclaiming his name, Maher-shalal-Chokshbaz, rapid and thoughtless plunder by those enjoying their disturbing behavior while quickly capturing a spoil as militants and armed robbers, Mahar, impetuously and anxiously, rashly and rapidly, headlong without thinking or hesitation, Shalal, plunder the prey, taking a spoil, Choksh, acting quickly in haste, rushing while dismayed, actually enjoying being greatly disturbed, Baz, while capturing the plunder 411 during a militant assault or armed robbery, Yashar, Isaiah 8:3, because before, Ky Barterim, in that prior to, the boy, Hana, the lad, the scattered sheep who are in danger, calls out, Kara, summons, greets, or proclaims. My father, Ab-Eni, or, my mother, Am-Eni. While 1 Kesser reads his father and his mother, the mount appears more appropriate. The political prowess, military strength, and economic wealth, Eth-Chael, the troops and capacity to function, of Damascus, weeping wounds, mourning and sorrow, along with, the plunder and spoils, Shalal, the war booty, property, and prey, of Shimron, Samaria, Shimron, the observant, will be carried away, Nasser, will be removed, before the presence, Larpana, of the king Melech, dictator and sovereign ruler, of Ashur, Assyria, Ashur, to fight and conquer, named after the god, Ashur, a warrior and conqueror symbolized as an archer with a winged disc. Yashar, deliverances from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:4. While Yahweh was predicting that the Assyrians would plunder Damascus en route to sacking Samaria, hastening to quickly seize the booty, a slightly different fate awaits one versus the other. Both would be plundered, but Damascus would remain inhabitable, albeit denuded of her chael, political prowess, military strength, and economic wealth. The city would lose the capacity to function as she had previously, along with losing her troops. By contrast, Samaria would be treated as shalal, prey to spoil, as a possession, and as war booty. Her people would be taken away as property. All of this would occur before the aptly named and wayward child would be willing to so much as acknowledge his spiritual mother or heavenly father. Bad things happen when we engage with the wrong people or believe that we can survive on our own. 412 But that is not the end of the story. In the 17th chapter, Yashar will use the fall of Damascus, with the city becoming a heap of twisted ruins, as the triggering event for World War III. With the Syrian government deposed, the nation will become the launching point for millions of Islamic jihadists, all intent on conquering Israel and killing Jews for Allah. With Russia and China supporting Iran's growing influence in the region after the US gifted Iraq to the theocracy of Iran, and Europe and the Americans are sponsoring the Sunnis, led by Saudi Arabia, the region is the powder keg which will ignite a nuclear conflagration. This event and prophecy will, therefore, be the triggering point for the time of Jacob's troubles, the Teruah harvest, and the arrival of the two witnesses. Having had the opportunity to read through this once again, I am convinced that we have correctly identified the two witnesses. The first, Uriah, demonstrates the corrective power of the Torah. At the direction of his king, he had violated in the most horrible way the second statement Yahweh etched in stone. But since the altar he copied is never mentioned again, there is every reason to believe that Uriah learned from his mistake and now understood why Yahweh did not want us to be religious. So long as he stuck to Yahweh's script, his testimony would not only be valid, but his tone would also clearly show that he knew what he was talking about because he had been in the same predicament he found his audience. And the story of Zachariah ben Yehoiada provides a vivid illustration of the set-apart spirit's willingness to adorn us in a garment of light, while conveying the empowering and enlightening result of having done so. The son of knowing Yahweh not only recognized that the people had passed over, failing to see or consider the terms and conditions associated with the covenant and, therefore, could not hope to succeed, they had completely 413 disassociated themselves from Yahweh. And having rejected him, he, in turn, had rejected them. The human capacity to remain focused and process a long stream of information has deteriorated over time. I came to this conclusion by reading scholarly tomes published during the 18th and 19th centuries and comparing their presentation to similar books written within the past 50 years. Back then, a sentence was often 10 lines long, 5 times longer than today's average. A paragraph was a page or more, 5 times longer than what is typically encountered in modern texts. Not only were chapters considerably more extensive, but it was also common for books to exceed 1,000 pages, 5 times longer than what is normally published today. Exemplifying this, the most popular genre of books today are fantasy novels, such as Harry Potter and The Hunger Games. There is no substance to them. At least with the Game of Thrones series, it was written as a social commentary on religion and politics, but with this undercurrent, the dark novel wasn't nearly as popular as the HBO show has become. Failing to adapt to our time, I initially wrote in a similar style, only to find that readers were having trouble following the train of thought from the beginning to the end of a sentence. They would lose focus in the midst of a paragraph. So, while I will occasionally include a long, run-on sentence, it is always buttressed by much shorter ones, and I typically start a new paragraph after 3 or 4 sentences. It is also the reason behind the bold text in my translations, and for placing the Hebrew words and further amplifications within parentheses and in standard 414 typeface. It is the reason I declutter these translations and present them a second time. This problem is getting worse. We have begun a transition from soundbites to texting and tweeting, from actual printed material to social media. The writing quality has plummeted, as has the vocabulary and reasoning of both writer and reader. Most people have lost the capacity to focus on anything important long enough to transfer the information from short-term to long-term memory. Exacerbated by an aversion to reason and exercising good judgment, the preponderance of people have no hope of understanding. As a result, the overtly political, religious, and conspiratorial prefer the sound bites and videos on social media to the comprehensive analysis found in volumes of books. Yahweh was correct when he said that they would look and yet not understand. This problem has become so ubiquitous, so obvious, it is demonstrated every day in the media. As a whole, mankind is neither observant nor rational. I share this with you at this time because Yahweh's next statement is long, with a singular sentence presented over 3 verses. A great deal will be conveyed before we have the opportunity to dissect it in our search for understanding. Yet again, why Yazaph, joining these things together, adding more information, hyphal imperfect, Yahweh, Yahweh, an accurate transliteration of the name Yahovah, our Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, reconciliation, spoke, Dabar, communicated using words, conveying these statements and message, Peel infinitive, intensifying the action and making it more descriptive and vivid. The prophet was influenced and put into action by the words God spoke. To me, LNE, as 415 God unto me, continuing to testify, Yud, providing an eternal witness which restores and sustains some while admonishing and warning others regarding unfavorable and dangerous future events, Yashaya, Isaiah 8:5, to say, La Amar, to declare. Indeed, KY, surely and truthfully as a consequence, because, Yan, for the express reason, these people, Han Haze, the family of related individuals, will reject and come to despise and spurn, Mas, will avoid, refusing an association with and disdain and scorn, loathing in their aversion, Kal perfect, the waters, Ethmaim, that which is essential to all life, and that which serves as the universal solvent, and thus cleansing properties of the waters, of Harshiloach, the one who is sent, Harshiloach, the dispatched, from Shalach, to stretch out and send, to extend oneself and to go forth, who walks, Ha-Holach, who goes, journeying and taking a path through life, conducting his life, as a gentleman, moving slowly and yet deliberately, La-At, by acting kindly to those facing a potentially violent situation, moving gently and softly, in a charming and comforting manner. Showing some humility and patience, while also, Wa, in addition, launching a scathing attack against, Masozeth, celebrating the wasting of and laughing at, Ritzin, the self-willed and pleasure-seeking, and, Wa, Ben Ramaliawu, the Son exalted above Yahweh, Yashaya, Isaiah 8:6, therefore, while I can, assuredly and accordingly, it is right that, behold, Hine, pay attention, look up, listen attentively, Yahweh, the proper pronunciation of the name of Yahweh. From 1 Kesser versus Odani in the Mount, Almighty God, Elohim, the Mighty One, from 1 Kesser, is withdrawing, and he is lifting up, Allah, is moving away and descending, offering up, against them, Alhem, before them and upon them, accordingly, Eth, the waters, Maim, a sea, a flood or tears, plural of my, who, whose, whom, or whosoever, of a powerful torrent, Ha 416 Naha of the potent and purposeful flow of a forceful multitude. A countless throng of severe individuals intent on accomplishing their purpose, flowing together like a mighty river, from Atsum, to be vast, numerous, and mighty, albeit unobservant, in addition to, Wa, the numerous soldiers, Rab, the extensive military and commanders, the abundant archers of the king, Ethmelech, of the political leader and dictator, of Ashur, Assyria, Ashur, to fight and conquer, named after the god, Ashur, a warrior and conqueror symbolized as an archer with a winged disc, along with, Wa, the entire, Eth-Shurl, manifestation of its power, Karbut-Hu, glorification of its wealth and status and attribution of divine status. And it will rise, Allah, it will ascend, increasing, over all of its channels, Al-Shurl-Afik-Hu, over all of its valleys and ravines, deep places in the sea and offshoots, from Asaph, where those who gather together are removed and taken away, ultimately perishing, and, Wa, travel, Holach, journey by walking, over all, Al-Shurl, its banks, Garda-Hu, its embankments, from an unused route meaning to cut off. Yashaya, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:7. These people would reject and spurn the essential life-giving waters of Shiloach, the one who is sent. And indeed, whether one identifies Shiloach with Yahweh's liberator, Moses, his shepherd, Messiah, and Passover lamb, Daud, his prophet, Yashaya, or his final witness, they were all dispatched with the living and cleansing waters of Yah, a God who walks light, gently and approaches mercifully. Yahweh's representatives are typically light, gentlemen. They are often charming, always patient, and their words consistently comfort the covenant's children. Unless the life of a family member is at stake, they are typically non-violent. They are never in a hurry, knowing that we have a lifetime to share Yahweh's mercy. 417 Masozeth cannot be rendered as delights in as is typical in English Bibles because the objects are scoundrels. In this context, the proper translation is launching a scathing attack against while laughing at Ritzin, the self-willed and pleasure-seeking, and Ben Ramaliawu, the Son exalted above Yahweh. Historically, the Northern Kingdom cast their lot in with Ritzin, the self-willed and pleasure-seeking, and Ben Ramaliawu, the Son exalted above Yahweh. And nothing has changed. Men are still choosing the likes of President Trump and Pope Francis over God. If, as I suspect, Yahweh was using the impending Syrian invasion of Israel to foretell a second incursion during our lifetimes, then we should interpret the prophet's words in the 8th chapter with what he would write in the 17th chapter using similar terminology. After the fall of Damascus sometime prior to 2030, Aha Naha Atsum, powerful torrent of Islamic soldiers and militants will flood into Israel from Syria, too many to stop and requiring Yahweh to intervene to stem the tide. And, Wah, it will go by, Shalaf Bar, it will go past, sweeping by in such a way as to alter, Cal perfect, Yahweh, Yahweh, the related to Yahuwah beloved of Yah, exerting the considerable force of a flood, Shataf, engulfing and overflowing, while, Wah, extending up to, Obar Ad, and pass over until reaching, the neck, Chuor, the throat, from Chur, the hostile confines in adversarial fashion seeking to besiege, making contact with and violently striking, Naga, touching and plaguing, while, Wah, coming to, higher. Existing to, stretch out, Mutar, spread out, its wings, Canafew, its ability to fly, filling, Mallow, a multitude crowding into, the breadth Roshab, the width or thickness, of your land, Erez Otter, your region or country, so that Emmanuel, God is with us 418 Emmanuel, with us is God, one word in one Kesser and all other Qumran scrolls but two in the mount. Yashar, freedom is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:8. After capturing the northern kingdom of Israel and hauling 10 of the 12 tribes away as slaves, the Assyrians would return, flooding into Yahweh with considerable force. But as the prophecy predicts, Yahweh would intervene to save his beloved. All that was required of Yahweh, Jews, was to embrace the conditions of the covenant and accept Yahweh's invitations to be called out and meet. This is also what will be required of them tomorrow under very similar circumstances. Flooding in from Syria, the militaries and militants will so overwhelm Israeli defenses that Yahweh will intervene to assure that his covenant family survives the onslaught. And that makes this prophecy, like the previous, one with a near and far fulfillment, with a demonstrable historical event serving as a harbinger of what is to come. Most of Israel's political leadership, and all among her gaggle of chief rabbis, are corrupt, self-serving, and misleading. And while these things serve as the common denominators among nations today, Israel is unique among the Western democracies in her power-sharing arrangement with religious fundamentalists. For Yahweh to save his people, both the secular and sectarian must be rejected. People, related individuals, by having decided to associate yourselves with misleading shepherds and perverted rulers, by you electing to form an association with errant and disingenuous leaders, befriending harmful and destructive associates, Cal imperative, you have chosen to be confused and divided, terrorized and broken, Wachatteth, and you will have decided your own fate, which is to be intimidated, 419 bewildered, and dismayed, separated and shattered, Cal imperative. So, by choosing to listen and respond to, Wajan, by you electing to hear and heed, choosing to give ear to while pondering and considering, hearkening to, hyphal imperative, by choosing to actively respond to what you hear, and engaging based upon it, you will become like those you are listening to in, every, shirl, distant land and far-off country, Merchik Erez, estranged and alienated place, you are asking for war, and must independently arm yourself for your defense, as are. Independently choosing to gird yourself for an impending battle, electing of your own accord to strengthen your army while binding others as part of your military preparations, hit pale imperative, and you will have chosen your own fate, which is to be terrorized and bewildered, divided and broken, Wachatteth, and you will have elected to be confused and discouraged, choosing of your own accord to be separated and splintered. Intimidated and shattered, Cal imperative, note, the mount repeats the concluding phrase but not one Kesser. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:9. By expressing their allegiance to misguided and immoral religious or political leaders, Israel has estranged herself from Yahweh. Separated, the people will continue to be abused, intimidated, and shattered. The alternative was to have been enriched, enlightened, and empowered by God through the covenant, with their Father protecting them, but why would we expect Jews to choose the easy road considering their history? Israel, more than any other nation, is preoccupied with the opinions of other nations, particularly the distant land across two seas. But by trying to garner favor and respect, Israel has made itself vulnerable to the diabolical demands placed upon the nation. In particular, consider how the United Nations has been commandeered by leftists and 420 Muslims to serve as the world's most irrational, hypocritical, and belligerent anti-Semitic voice. In response, Yahweh is warning his people that by doing so they are asking for war. Estranged from him, they will be left to defend themselves, but this time their preparations for battle will be ineffective. The nation will be divided, intimidated, and then overwhelmed by the sheer number of militants and terrorists. International treaties and defense agreements start more wars than they deflect, and the world is teetering on a prime example. The United States deliberately inspired, funded, and armed the insurrection by which the popularly elected and pro-Russian government of Ukraine was replaced with one Washington could bribe, arm, and control. This was done to set up a fight that would justify the continued existence of NATO. So now, with Russia reacting to the United States placing arms in Ukraine as Kennedy did when the Soviets armed Cuba. After NATO had placed nuclear missiles in Turkey, Europe is on the precipice of war. Unlike the Soviets of old, however, who withdrew their missiles after negotiating a promise from the Americans not to invade Cuba, and to remove its missiles from Turkey, the US is saying that it has no intention of demilitarizing Ukraine, leaving Russia, by design, with no other option than to protect its homeland by removing them herself. All the while, President Biden is badgering every ally to join the unbridled taunting of Putin. In the process, the peacemaker is made to appear as the belligerent, while the most militaristic is cast as being diplomatic. Indoctrinated rather than educated, Americans actually believe the propaganda. All the while, China and Russia have allied to work together against American intimidation and sanctions. As evidence of this, while Biden threatened to shut down the Russia to Germany Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and then blew it up, China signed a 30-year deal to purchase 10,421 cubic meters of Russian natural gas a year, paying for it in euros. Further, if Russia is forced into Ukraine to protect her borders, expect China to invade Taiwan, knowing that the West cannot afford to simultaneously sanction and battle two of the world's largest, most populous, and most powerful nations. Moreover, and as a further deterrent, between them, China and Russia control 90% of the planet's rare earth elements, the building blocks of technology and advanced weaponry. This has galvanized the world, setting the stage for World War III, with Russia and China against the United States and Europe, with Iran's Shias on one side and Saudi Arabia's Sunnis on the other. As these nations vie for supremacy and alliances, Israel will be played as a pawn which will be sacrificed, just as Czechoslovakia was ceded to the Nazis to appease Hitler to avoid the war, misguided diplomacy exacerbated. Foolish shepherds cost 6 million Jews their lives. It is a shame most people never learn. God is not just saying that choosing to form alliances with others is a bad idea. He is revealing that forming associations with religious institutions, misleading shepherds, and other nations, merchik eres, distant countries, while attempting to defend oneself, independently arming oneself and preparing for war, results not in peace, but leads to a nation's demise by being divided and terrorized, being isolated, broken, and shattered. Rather than religion, politics, patriotism, a powerful military, negotiating international treaties, and diplomacy being beneficial, God is saying that all of these things are counterproductive and destructive. When we bring Yeshaya's revelations into view, it is as if we are reading tomorrow's newspaper. But alas, far too many of God's chosen people remain blind and are unaware of what is about to befall them. 422 You may want to devise your schemes, you can choose to plan your course of action in consideration of your own inclinations, aware of the ongoing consequences. Cal imperative, based upon the revolting advice and counsel of others. 8 Tsar, predicated upon the religious schemes of those who are openly defiant, winking as they promote their malicious ideas. But, it will be nullified because you have chosen to be in violation of the covenant. Para, it will be thwarted and revoked. Failing because it is invalid, breaking the terms of the relationship agreement. Hoffel imperfect. Choose to make your pronouncements and state your claims. Debar, you may opt to be verbose, uttering a great many words, saying many things. Peel imperative active, the person making this statement is impacted by it and receives the consequence of it as a result of the choices they have made. But, none of it will stand. Lo cum, it will not be affirmed, come to fruition, or be accomplished. Cal imperfect, because truly, ky, for the reason of, Emmanuel, God is with us, Emmanuel. God is near and is in a relationship with us, from with, among, and near, anaknu, us, God, written as one word in one Kesser rather than 3 in the Mount. Yashaya, freedom is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:10. If you live in Israel, or follow the nation in the news, then you know just how bombastic and divisive rabbinic rhetoric has become. It is as if rabbis have burst out of the pages of their argumentative, misogynist, irrational Babylonian Talmud to demonstrate the many ways Judaism corrupts a soul. Their speeches are long, and they are obnoxious, proving with each maligning statement that they have put themselves at odds with God. But they are not alone, as they are joined in the deep end of delusion by the advocates of conspiracy. Indeed, one of the most destabilizing aspects of the internet and social media is its propensity to attract and befuddle conspiracy 423 advocates. They feed off one another and are predisposed to believe the most preposterous notions. And it is not just that they have been horribly misled, it's also that they lose their ability to reason in the process, and they forfeit their credibility as a result. Beyond the realization that there are few things we can do that are more denigrating, Yahweh opposes the promotion of conspiracy theories for 5 important reasons. First, there is no way to assess the sincerity of a person's devotion to the truth when they are this susceptible to obvious delusions. There is too high a likelihood that such individuals will simply repeat what they believe others want to hear so that they are accepted within the group. Second, should someone come to know about Yahweh and decide to speak about him, while at the same time promoting an array of conspiracy theories, they will destroy God's credibility among those who realize their conspiracies are without merit. The truth should never be mixed with lies. This is how the most damaging myths are born. Third, there is no exit plan in eternity. Those susceptible to accepting and promoting ridiculous notions would eventually become irritating. They would find ways to do what the religious and political on earth have done to corrupt God's intent and instructions, making heaven too much like life as we know it now. Fourth, the lone common denominator among those beguiled by these false assertions is that they are living meaningless and unfulfilling lives. They are universally looking to blame someone else for their miserable existence. And God would much prefer that we accept personal responsibility, and then choose to participate in the covenant to find something more satisfying. 424 and fifth, it isn't long before most conspiratorialists become anti-Semitic. The oldest and most sinister conspiracy remains, blame the Jews. Fortunately, there is a better way. When God is with us because we have chosen to be with God, then nothing man does or says matters. The words and plans of every religious and political advocate will be nullified. Man's schemes are compelling, but they will all be thwarted. Man's words are spellbinding, but they are invalid. Man's weapons are powerful, but they will not prevail, because Emmanuel, God is with us. For indeed, because truly, this is what, Yahweh, the proper pronunciation of the name of Yehovah, our Eloah, God has directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, restoration, said, Amar, conveyed and communicated, to me, Eleni, in a manner akin to, Ka, likened in corresponding to, a strong and strengthening, Cheska, an empowering and renewing, hand, Yod, by way of an active influence and outreach, thereby teaching me so that I would be correct, Yasha Eni. Guiding me and instructing me, admonishing me so that I would recognize the importance of being right, Kal imperfect, thereby keeping me from walking, Min Holok, so that I avoid going, staying away from traveling through life, Kal infinitive, in the ways, Bar Derek, in the manner, of these particular people, Han Haze, of individuals such as these, by saying, La Ma, drawing near to convey, Kal infinitive, Yashaya, Isaiah 8:11. I do not want you to continually or consistently speak of, Lo Amar. I am opposed to you making a habit of claiming or declaring, even designating something as or responding to, Kal imperfect paragogic none. The intent is for us to view this warning literally, recognizing that there is a problem with consistently and aggressively 425 promoting, conspiracies, Kesha, covert plans to carry out illegal or harmful acts as part of an alliance, conscious and planned defiance of government, treason, from Kashar. To league together for a political or religious purpose, conspiring to spellbind others, controlling them through deceitful means, tying things together in a scripted fashion to advance a political agenda. 4. La, because in this regard, everything or anything, Shirl, which by association, Asher, to reveal a relationship which, the people Ham, related individuals with common interests, continue to claim, Amar, call and say, promise and declare. Designate and propose on an ongoing basis actually, Kal imperfect, that this is a conspiracy, Haze Kesha, this is a secret plot and reflects the covert plans of a group to carry out illegal and harmful acts, a conscious, planned, and collective, clandestine and counterproductive plot to harm and control others, from Kashar, to league together for a political or religious purpose, conspiring to spellbind others, controlling them through deceitful means, tying things together in a scripted fashion to advance an agenda. And in addition, Wa'eth, also accordingly, do not respect or revel in, Lo, show no regard for, that which concerns them, Arats, that which they regard and believe has the propensity to prevail, terrorize, inspire, or oppress, wondering about or fearing them, Morahulo, dreading them or being anxious about them, do not be alarmed or terrorized by them, and do not respect them. Yashaya, deliverance is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:12. God does not want, in fact, is wholly opposed to, us commingling his testimony with myths, regardless if they are religious, political, or conspiratorial. He does not want his good name and valid revelations to imply that the surrounding lies are credible. And he does not want the authenticity of what he has to say dismissed because it is 426 surrounded by such stupidity. In other words, if you want to promote conspiracy theories, refrain from speaking about God. If you want to converse with Yahweh, do not pursue conspiracy. Some years ago, October 15, 2017, an edition of Time magazine was entitled, Why So Many People Believe Conspiracy Theories. The author, Jeffrey Kluger, after destroying the myth that every health organization around the world is covering up the conspiratorial mantra that vaccines are the cause of autism using Occam's razor, presented the research which had been recently conducted on conspirators. The findings demonstrate, according to Professor Joseph Ushinsky of the University of Miami, that conspiracy theories are for losers. Those whose political party has lost an election, who have failed in business and in life, look for someone else to blame for their futility. In addition, those who promote conspiracy theories almost universally demonstrate a need to be seen as special. Their lies set them apart as uniquely important from their perspective and are used to lure in others who will stroke their ego. The title of a study published in May 2017 in the European Journal of Social Psychology reveals their mindset. They consider themselves too special to be duped. This explains why they remain impervious to evidence which refutes their irrational beliefs, as disproving them delegitimizes them. With regard to, concerning, Yahweh, an accurate transliteration of the name Yahovah, our Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, reconciliation, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, of the heavenly envoys and representatives, him, you should set apart, Kadash, you should treat as special and not include him in anything which is profane or mundane. 427 and, him, you should wonder about, be in awe of, and respect, Mora Atom, you should revere. And, him, you should be concerned about and inspired by, Aratz Atom, you should be impressed and be aware he has the propensity to prevail, active. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:13. We have come to see words like Mora and Aratz as being similar to Yer, such that they convey reverence or fear, respect or dread, inspiration or anxiety, depending upon the individual's perspective and circumstance. Those who come to know and respect Yahweh will come to revere him and be inspired by him. While those who reject him, preferring conspiracy, religion, or politics instead, will come to dread the consequence of being judged by him. Simply stated, respect him or fear him. Yahweh's words either serve us or work against us, depending upon our response to them. The Torah provides the means to participate in the covenant for those who accept them, but for those who reject his testimony, God will cite his Torah at their trial and use it to sentence them. So then, he will become, he will exist, as a sanctuary, La Mikdash, a temple, tabernacle, and set-apart place, from Kadash, to be set apart from that which is common. But, as a stone, La Eben, as a rock, for smiting, Negef, for striking and dashing, and, as a rock, Larcher, as a hostile implement designed to lay siege, for stumbling, Mikshal, as an obstacle and for a downfall, from Kashal, to stagger and totter, for both, Shanaim, for the two, houses, Beithi, homes and households, of Yisrael, individuals who struggle with God, as a trap, La Pok, as a dreadful calamity, and, as a snare, Mokesh, as a means of entrapment, for the 428 inhabitants, La Yashab, for those who live and settle, of Yahushalem, source of guidance on reconciliation. Yashar, Isaiah 8:14. And then, many, Rabbim, a great number, shall stumble, Kashal, they will falter and fail, stagger, totter over, be overthrown, and suffer a downfall, upon them, Barhem, with and in them, and fall, Nafal, and go from a higher position to a lower one, Kal perfect. They will be captured, Lakid, they will be caught and seized, broken, Shabba, they will be mauled, crushed, and destroyed, shattered and demolished, Nephil perfect, and controlled by others, Yakosh, lured into a trap, snared, and ruled by others. Yashar, freedom is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:15. And so, it would be. Israel would be ruled by others for the next 2,700 years. Their overlords would include the Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, Imperial Romans, Roman Catholics, Arab Muslims, Ottoman Muslims, and finally the British. All the while, they would have no one to blame but themselves. On any day, at any moment, had they turned to Yahweh and relied on him rather than on a plethora of religions, their governments, their military, and international alliances, he would have provided a safe sanctuary for them. It is the same for everyone in the world today. We have the same choice afforded the Northern Kingdom circa 740 BCE, religion or the covenant relationship, government or God, the military or the Mikra, treaties or the Torah. The two houses of Israel speak of divisions, rival claims, and infighting. The Northern Kingdom, known collectively as Ephraim, or just Israel, was estranged from the Southern Kingdom, which was led by Yahudah, Judah. This split occurred following King Solomon, breaking the chosen people into two houses, neither of 429 which was allied with Yahweh. The consequence was explained by the prophet Hosea, through whom God revealed that both houses had broken his covenant and were therefore no longer his children. He divorced himself of them, but not at the same time or forever. Speaking prophetically of what would eventually occur, God told the prophet Hosea that he would heal the rift, something he accomplished in concert with his son on Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shavuot in 33 CE, year 4000 year, and that 2 days, which represents 2000 years, later, and thus in 2033, he will reunite Israel and Yahweh in the process of reaffirming the covenant and reconciling his relationship with his children. For this to occur, the rebellious age of the religious, and divisive time of the conspirators would fall. And that is what is being predicted here in this passage. Just prior to Yahweh's return, when the consequence of political, religious, militant, and conspiratorial rhetoric becomes intolerable, a remnant of Yahweh will return to Israel and then to God. And while we do not know if it will be a few thousand, tens or hundreds of thousands, a significant number of Jews will be reconciled. As a result, most will not be so fortunate. And, they will stumble and be overthrown, kashal, they will fail and be brought down, with, a great many rabbis, also, falling, naphal, being brought down and ruined. And, they shall be destroyed, ceasing to exist, shabba, broken and cut off, ensnared and controlled, yarash, trapped, even, captured, becoming immovable while clinging together, lakit, caught, seized, bound, and imprisoned while grasping at each other. Yashar, saves, Isaiah 8:15. The language here was designed to convey two very different eventualities, one for the conspirators and the 430 other for their victims. While both will stumble, be brought down, and fall, those who have led the rebellion against God will be incarcerated, while the souls of those they beguiled and abused will be destroyed, ceasing to exist. What's interesting, however, in all of this is that, even when confronted by God, these religious and political leaders will cling together. In this next passage, there are two very different ways to translate Zarah, the verb associated with Tauda, God's written and restoring testimony, the authoritative document regarding the terms of his agreement. Zarah can be rendered as to wrap up, cover, bind, and store the document, to keep it safe and to harass and frustrate those considered to be adversarial to it. But it can also be translated as to bring about the purpose of the testimony, or to fix, mend, and restore the witness. Also, we find chatam used in conjunction with Yahweh's Torah. Based upon how we translate this verb, God could be saying that his instructions will be signed and sealed with his personal stamp, that his guidance will be sealed up and made secure, or that his teaching represents the appropriate pattern for living. Therefore, I am inclined to include all of these definitions in this fully amplified translation. I am sharing this with you in advance of presenting this next translation because Yahweh is in the midst of affirming one of the most surprising declarations we have considered thus far. Yahweh foresaw, and then foreclosed on, a problem that, unchecked, would have become an irresolvable plague. This suggests that one of the reasons rabbis remain fixated on their Talmud and Mishnah rather than Yahweh's Torah is that they do not understand it. Oblivious to God's teaching, averse to his guidance, unaware even of his name, stupefied by the purpose of his invitations, and ignorant of the intent of the covenant, they are engaged in mental masturbation among themselves. 431 While their fixation on one another is annoying, their presumptuous and argumentative nature only affects those spellbound by them and, thus, only religious Jews. Apart from their errant co-opting of terms such as Torah and Passover, their verbal diarrhea does not demean or discredit Yahweh's Torah, Shem, Mikra, or Berith. They are disparaging themselves, not God. Choose to wrap up, cover, and store the written testimony, keeping the correct information safe and secure from those who oppose it, and then bear witness to the authorized agreement to corroborate it and restore the relationship, Zarah Tauda, restrict access for a while and then return and testify repeatedly, attesting to and confirming the witness, Kal imperative, sign, seal, and affix the personal stamp to the Torah's teaching, Chatam Torah, secure the Torah's guidance, recognizing that the Torah's instructions represent the appropriate pattern for living, Kal imperative, among my disciples who learn from me, limud eni, those I teach and who receive instruction from me as receptive students. Yashar, saves, Isaiah 8:16. After asking Israel to observe his Torah and listen to him for the 700 years prior to Yashar, the political and religious leadership had become so corrupt, it was no longer of any use. In fact, it had become counterproductive. The people were so averse to God and his guidance, their every inclination was to misappropriate and misrepresent his testimony. This left Yahweh with a difficult decision. He could continue to subject his teaching to religious gerrymandering or conceal it from the misguided long enough that, when the opportunity was right, he could share it with those who would then correctly convey his instructions to his people. 432 Based upon what the religious have written and have said, as well as what Yahweh has revealed about them, his Torah would be withheld and protected for a very long time. The restriction began with this instruction to Yashar sometime before 700 BCE, and for most Jews, circa 2023 CE, it is still under wraps. As we have seen, Yashar is reasonably verbose when it comes to revealing the arrival of the final witness, a chota, sucker from the original rootstock, whom Yahweh will teach through his Spirit to correctly convey his guidance to his people. He is likely counted among the covenant members who limud, are instructed so that they can teach. Since God does not want to save everyone, he makes it difficult for those he does not like to know him. If you are not receptive to learning, if you are not willing to respond appropriately to God's guidance, if you don't accept the fact that his testimony is limited to the Torah, Nabi, wa Mizmor, if you are not rational and don't appreciate the value of corroborating information, or if you fail to make the necessary connections to correctly ascertain Yahweh's approach to mankind, then he does not want you lurking around in his presence. The first time through this, I thought that God was universally restricting access to his written testimony and Torah guidance. And while there would be legitimate reasons for him to do so at times, his constraints were limited, directed toward those inclined to corrupt and pervert his teaching. This would, therefore, include all those who errantly and religiously refer to the Torah, teaching as the law, to Yahweh as the Lord, to the Mikra as Jewish feasts, or to the Mashiach and Ben El as Jesus Christ. If you turn to the Talmud or New Testament for answers, you are on God's restricted list. 433 Also telling, Yahweh has obstructed access to the original autograph of his Torah, the signed copy he provided Moses, which is alongside the Ark of the Covenant beneath Moriah in Yerushalayim, in that he does not want it treated as a religious artifact. And yet, through the Dead Sea Scrolls, God has secured access to the teaching and guidance within his Torah for those willing to learn from him. Our attitude toward Yahweh, therefore, determines our access. As proof, contemplate why Yahweh deliberately concealed his presence from Israel. After concealing his Torah from the religious who would have otherwise misappropriated it, Yahweh would hide his presence from those he has been criticizing for having misled his people. So, I will wait in anticipation, Chaka, I will be patient while longing for that which is inscribed and engraved, which cuts me into the relationship, from Chaka, to portray in print, engraving that which allocates a share, for the approach of, La, to draw near, Yahweh, the proper pronunciation of the name of Yahweh, our Eloah, God has directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, restoration, who is concealing his presence, Satar Panahu, who is making his appearance and characteristics, even his existence, unknown, from the house, Min Baith, from the household, of Yaakov, one who embeds his heels, a pseudonym for Yisrael. Then, therefore, accordingly, I will confidently await the outcome which is beneficial and good, Kawa, I will look forward to, anticipating, eagerly expecting and ingathering, in association with him, Lahu, drawing near him. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:17. 434 Here again, we find further proof that, while God can be known, he has no interest in making it easy. And while his agenda and timing remain a mystery for most, those who listen to him confidently await the beneficial outcome he has promised. We know that he will return for Israel, remove the filth, and restore our polluted planet. Yashar was not responsible for attracting an audience, building a following, promoting this message, or reaching out to his community. Yahweh placed the children before him whom he wanted to hear this message. Since Yashar isn't known to have performed a single sign or wonder in the sense of a miracle, oath and mofith are being used to represent something far more impressive, more enduring, and useful, prophecy. By conveying a message which accurately foretold future events, Yahweh proved that he is God, that he inspired these words, and that we can trust what he has to say. Then by punctuating his predictions with oath, illustrative and memorable examples, God provided mofith, important and awe-inspiring events which serve to encourage a response, all by revealing future history. It is impossible to overstate the importance of prophecy. What it accomplishes is more valuable than the universe and everything in it. What could be more important than proving Yahweh exists, than proving that his testimony in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms can be trusted, than demonstrating that he has provided a means to develop a relationship with him, and that he is ready, willing, and able to empower and enrich our existence. Behold, Hine, pay attention, look up, note the added emphasis and consider the details, I myself, Eni, and, that which I have conceived and given birth to, Ha Yeled, the offspring, for benefit from the relationship that, Asher, through which I am happy to reveal the joys of the association and show the correct path 435 to take, which gives meaning to life, which, Yahweh, Yahweh, an accurate transliteration of the name Yehovah, our Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, and our Shalom, reconciliation, has bestowed through me, Nathan La Eni, has brought to me, presented to me, and given to me, serve as signs to illustrate the message, La Oath, as a banner to convey a marvelous account which serves as proof and is memorable, from youth, to agree, and, Wa, as symbols of important future events which will occur, La Mophith, as extraordinary indicators which encourage a response by revealing that which will transpire, from Yaffa, to be bright, for, with, in, among, and through, Bar, Yisrael, those who engage and endure with God, Yisrael, individuals who struggle and wrestle with God, in conjunction with, Im, together with, Yahweh, Yahweh, the proper pronunciation of the name of Yehovah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, and our Shalom, restoration, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, of the heavenly representatives, who dwells, camping out, Shaken, who resides, lives, and abides, making a home and remaining, in, Bar, Mount, Har, the ridgeline, elevated terrain, and high elevation of, Zion, Zion, the signs posted along the way. Yashar, freedom is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:18. While I think that this is the most insightful rendering of these words, it is not the only possible interpretation. Yashar could be commenting upon the name of the prophetess child, saying that it is an important sign for the future of Israel, and also, the offspring he would ultimately conceive include the covenant's children, all conceived and growing through his revelations during the last days. And while both perspectives are relevant and accurate indicators of future events which would transpire in Israel, compelling prophecy is Yeshaya's greatest gift to his people. 436. But not everyone would be on the same page and see things the same way. There would be those who would prioritize religion over relationship, man's spiritual advice over God's promises, the assistance of saints rather than the gift of life. And when, why, so to the contrary, rather and instead, they say to you, Amar al-Atam, they plead with you, encouraging you, you should consult, Dirosh, you should choose to seek previously unknown information, expecting answers, resort to, petition, and ponder, seriously consider revelations, Kal imperative, with, El, in consideration of, moving toward, the mediums, Ha-Ob, those who claim to communicate with ghosts of the dead, which is a form of sorcery, the witches, wizards, soothsayers, and occultists speaking for saints and familiar spirits, a conjunction of Ab and Or, fathers of light, and, Wa, the spiritualists, Ha-Yardani, those claiming to possess spiritual insights, revealing knowledge gleaned from the spiritual world, false prophets, diviners, and necromancers, from Yada, to know and claim familiarity, and Oni, to vex and grieve, who meditate and mutter unfounded sentiments, Ha-Haga, who ruminate over highly selective information to devise a plot and express their woeful and imaginative opinions, and, Wa, who twitter satanic musings, Ha-Zarfaf, who chirp like birds, whisper, and mutter that which is deadly, related to Zapha, the offshoots of venomous serpents and poisonous vipers. Instead, shouldn't the people, Ha-Lo-Am? As a rhetorical question, would it not be better for the family, consult, Dirosh, seek information and expect answers, petition and seriously consider the revelations, look for, care about, and seek to develop a relationship, Kal imperfect active, with, El, their God, Elohim Hu, through, Bod, from and for the benefit of, the living, Ha-Che, those who are alive, nourished, growing, and actually exist as a conscious being, not, Al, as opposed 437 to, the dead, Ha-Moth, those absent of life. Yashar, deliverance is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:19. With the answer so obvious, why do as few as 1 in a million consult with God through the living, and why do billions listen to the dead? Paul is dead, as are Akiba and Muhammad. So is every Christian saint, the sages among rabbinic Talmudists, and successful suicide bombers among Islamic jihadists. There were a number of other options regarding the translation of Al as not at the conclusion of the sentence. Aleph lamed, can be transliterated as either El or Al. As a noun, El is Almighty God. As a preposition, El is translated, to, toward, in the direction of, on, at, by, among, or for. But Al can also serve to negate a verb or a noun, as it is here with Ha-Moth. It seemed logical to select the definition which best fits the context of the discussion. This known, there were 3 words I found amusing in Yeshaya's declaration. First, a Yardani, spiritualist is Yada, familiar with Oni, vexing grief and agony. Therefore, there isn't much benefit in consulting them unless one is searching for ways to afflict oneself on Yom Kippur or aggravate oneself by reading the Zohar. Second, Haggah, which was translated as who meditate, and mutter unfounded sentiments, speaks of ruminating over highly selective information to devise a plot and express a woefully imaginative opinion. This is the sum and substance of conspiracy theories. Isolated information is removed from the context of an event while all non-corroborating evidence is discarded. Then while the conspiratorialist ruminates on their highly selective data points, they mix in a plethora of bizarre theories. And third, 2,700 years before Twitter was invented, knowing that social media would be the primary conduit of the crazies, Yashar wrote that they would use 438 Twitter to tweet their debilitating venom. Social media has become like a neurotoxin for this comatose generation. According to La, approaching and concerning the Torah, source of teaching, guidance, instruction, and direction, and Wa, according to La, the written testimony which presents correct and corroborating information regarding restoration, Tauda, the authorized documentation regarding the confirmation of the relationship agreement pertaining to an inheritance, a compound of Torah, source of guidance, instruction, direction, and teaching, and Yud, to repeatedly testify about restoration and to continually bear an affirming witness, if, whenever and whosoever on the condition, they do not speak, Lo Amar, they do not answer and respond, Kal imperfect active, in a manner consistent with, Ka, in a way which is comparable to and compatible with, in accordance and agreement with, this specific message and the way it is worded, Hadabar Hazeh, these statements, accounting, treatise, and communication. Then by association, Asher, then as a result, they lack discernment and are without enlightenment in their approach to Shahar, unlike you Shahar, they are without and will be negated, in the dark, having nothing to offer, and failing to seek or earnestly inquire, they are lacking so much as even the first glimpse of light because they are moving towards Satan. Yashar, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:20. In this passage, Wa, which was rendered as and, does not distinguish between the Torah and Tauda but, instead, associates and connects them. Perhaps the best way to look at this would be to see the Torah not only as the first 5 books of the Tauda, which is comprised of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, but also to recognize that Yahweh's Torah, teaching, instruction, direction and guidance permeate the entirety of his Tauda, written testimony. 439 It was by using the approach Yashar is advocating here that I wrote the 4 volumes of Questioning Paul. When Paul's New Testament opinions were in conflict with Yahweh's Torah, I held him accountable. And I came to the same conclusion, one Paul, himself, acknowledges. Those who contradict God while claiming to speak for God in Lahu Shahar, lack discernment and are without enlightenment in their approach to Shahar, Satan. In the 14th chapter of Yashar, which we will consider in detail in the Babel, Confusion chapter of Volume 4 of Observations, we will discover Satan's name is Hail ben Shahar, brightly shining son of darkness. Hail ben Shahar depicts the adversary as the flashy and boastful child of the East. The devil is comprised of contrasts, hypocrisy, and contradictions as light and darkness, enlightenment and obscurity. Satan is an ostentatious show-off, a spiritual, energy-based being predisposed to mislead and make others appear foolish as they descend into the darkness and gloom of a black hole. If a person is preaching from any one of Paul's 14 letters, they lack discernment, their words are for naught, and they are headed to Shaul along with Shahar. If a person is speaking or writing in a manner which is consistent with the Torah and Tauda, Yahweh's source of teaching and guidance and his written testimony regarding restoration, then they are discerning, their words matter, they are enlightening, and they are on their way to Yahweh. In the end, this is the only litmus test which actually matters. As it relates to Shahar, Satan, in the Canaanite and Phoenician iteration of the Baal, Lord myth, as manifest in the Tel Ras Shamra texts, Shahar refers to the dawn and its dim light emerging out of the darkness. Shahar is also the name of the Canaanite and Phoenician god. The fact that a regional pagan god bore this name is especially 440 relevant because the central character in these myths is Baal, Yahweh's principal name and title for Satan. In that they are fascinating, even revealing. I'll discuss the Ras Shamra texts at the conclusion of chapter 13 of volume 3 of Observations. Before we move on to the conclusion of the 8th chapter of Yashar, it may be helpful for you to know that, as it relates to the previous statement, there are 2 options regarding God in the final clause of the question. It can be rendered as a preposition, communicating behind, through, over, and around. Or it can serve as a noun, conveying the price paid, the gift offered as a quid pro quo, or the service rendered in exchange for one's life. Considering the revealing parallelism which is derived as a result of choosing one form of speech over the other, the choice seems obvious. Then, Wa, they will pass through it, Obar Bahai, intoxicated, they will travel through and cross over, the darkness of Shaha, stubborn and stiff-necked, strong-willed and perplexed Kasha, wholly resistant to any advice or assistance due to a puzzling lack of humility and an attitude of superiority, and will experience cruelty and brutality as a result, enduring hardship, often, in addition to, starving and famished Rab, malnourished and weakened, akin to Roa, willfully malicious and overtly evil. And it shall come to pass, higher, so it will come to be, when, they are malnourished and weakened, Rab, starving and famished as a result of being willfully malicious, overtly evil, and deliberately afflicted, they will become antagonized and provoked to anger, struggling with their change in status, Katsaf, they will be enraged and vengeful, suffering from cognitive dissonance in conjunction with their strife, fretting that the situation in which they find themselves is unfair and 441 undeserved. Showing dissension at having been uprooted and splintered. Their status will diminish, and they will be treated with contempt as a result of their propensity to slander and insult the reputation. Kalal, they will be despised and seen as vile, they will curse and blaspheme, becoming an object of scorn as a result of their reputation, of their king, Bar Melech Hu, of their leader, and, of their god, Bar Elohim Hu, in opposition to the Almighty, turning away, Pana, facing away, Kal perfect, unfaithful in the relationship, Mal, moving toward adultery. Yashar, freedom is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:21. This speaks of rabbis today, and over the past couple of hundred years. Seditiously and surreptitiously in league with Shaha, while stubborn and easily provoked, they are wholly resistant to advice. For a very long time, rabbis have shown a puzzling lack of humility. And it is this unwarranted air of superiority that has turned so many people against Jews, and has been devastating for God's people. The Torah is resolute in this regard. When we embrace the covenant, we prevail while those who reject Yahweh's testimony fail. The status of those who reject Yahweh is diminished. Why then have rabbis chosen to slander and insult their God for having done precisely what he and his son said they would do? Why do so many people find it so difficult to accept responsibility for their mistakes? This is the consequence of being misled. It is why Yahweh despises religion. Unto the land, el eres, then to the region, they will look, Nabat, they will gaze, but, behold, they will see, Hine, pay attention, they will find, disfavor, Zara, anguishing trouble, calamitous distress, 442 and unfavorable circumstances as a result of an antagonistic and competitive rival mistress who is vexing and adversarial, and, darkness, Cheshka, obscurity with an absence of light, with discouraging, dejection and sadness, gloom, oppression, soka, anguish as a result of being constrained and distressed, and, into a place devoid of light, a feeler, into total darkness, lacking any light, they will be driven and stray, Nadak, they will be exiled and enticed, lured and scattered, outcast and banished, Paul passive. Yashar, deliverance is from Yahweh, Isaiah 8:22. For most, being devoid of light will simply mean that their souls will fade away. But for some, their souls will be exiled, banished to the place without light, Shaul.